Stronger than expected. That is how analysts are describing January's jobs report as the stock market reacts to the news. President Trump is taking notice, touting the new numbers as proof that his economic policies are working. Here to take a deeper dive into the new numbers is Sylvan Lane, business editor here at The Hill. Leading up to this announcement, Sylvan, the Trump administration seemed to be attempting to downplay the importance of these jobs numbers. Now that they're out, they're proof that President Trump's economic policies are working. Tell us what you mean, or tell us what you make of these numbers and what they say. I mean, does President Trump have a case here to be made that this is proof that his maybe tariff policy and his overall economic policy is paying dividends?
So this was certainly a much stronger report than most economists were expecting. The average baseline for expectations in terms of how many jobs that we were supposed to have added in January was about 70,000. It turns out we added 130,000 in January instead. Now, I would note that these numbers often get revised in the months that follow, and we have seen some pretty huge revisions to previous job numbers. In fact, today the Labor Department released its first benchmark revision of 2025 job numbers. And that brought average job growth in 2025 down to about 15,000 jobs a month. Normally we're looking for about 100,000 jobs per month as a baseline to keep the economy going. The Trump administration, though, has been insisting that under this new regime where, thousands of immigrants are being deported per month and there's mass federal layoffs, that 50 to 75,000 jobs is a better baseline for what the economy they're making should be. But of course, there's a lot of dispute about that among economists too.
Yeah, I wonder how does the business community look at this 130,000 number for January, considering the revisions that could take place later on?
I think they're approaching it with cautious optimism. We've seen some relatively mixed economic data over the past few months in terms of, consumer spending looking really good one month and then coming in a little bit lower than expectations another. A lot of the data has been kind of all over the map. And I think a lot of that has to do with this very uncertain time we're in, not just when it comes to the impact of the president's tariff and trade policies, but the growing impact of artificial intelligence on the workforce. For the past year, we've seen what economists are calling a low hire, low fire job market, where companies are wary of getting rid of workers because they don't know how easy or cheap they'll be to rehire, but they're not really bringing in new ones, which has been a huge issue for people who would be looking for these entry level jobs that some experts say might be impacted by AI. So the overall picture is one of uncertainty and cautious optimism. But I think the inflation report coming out on Friday will also kind of impact the way that the business community is seeing this picture overall.
Yeah, this looming ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court on the president's trade policy, I imagine adding to that uncertainty. 4.3% on the unemployment rate, edged lower. What do you make of that? What do you think that says about the state of the economy?
I think it kind of speaks back to that low hire, low fire dynamic that we were talking about a little bit earlier, where, 4.3% unemployment is much lower than the historical average. When I started covering this stuff in 2015, the idea of a 5% unemployment rate was considered maybe as low as you could go without getting crazy inflation. The fact of the matter is, the economy and the job market specifically has been in this weird holding pattern where people are bracing for this big change that may already be happening. But given the uncertainty that we've seen so far, we could see the economy do better than expected if AI enhances productivity. We could see that help with, certain things, but that could also take away from job gains. So overall, I think the change in the unemployment rate or where we're at just shows that the job market is in a pretty solid place right now as the economy is trying to process these broader major changes that are likely to intensify as the year continues.
People talk a lot about AI and healthcare as sectors of the economy. Which sectors in the labor market saw the most gains in this report?
It was really the healthcare sector, the healthcare and social assistance sector. That has really been the main engine of job creation for the past few years, especially since the pandemic. A lot of that has to do with the fact that this country, the population is getting much older. And, as you get older, you need more healthcare. you need more people to help out with that. So that's a big driver of the job gains we've seen so far. Some economists were a little bit concerned, though, that the vast majority of the job gains came in the one sector of the economy that's been driven a lot by demographic reasons and less so, some of the different factors we've been seeing in the economy. I think a bigger pickup in manufacturing jobs, a bigger pickup in some of these entry level service sector jobs that have been pretty low to pick up, I think that would be a lot more reassuring for economists going forward.
Yeah, the aging demographic could present problems for the economy in the long run. You mentioned this CPI report coming out on Friday. What are you looking for on that, and what clues do you think that will give us on the state of the economy?
So, simply put, we're looking to see if the number is going to go up or going to go down in this one. Obviously, there's been a lot of volatility with food and energy prices, which sometimes is reflective of the way that the Fed is approaching this, depending on what they're most concerned about. But the inflation rate of 2.7% annually as of December, that's about what it was when Trump was elected in November 2024, promising people who were upset by price growth that he was going to fix it. While President Trump has insisted that inflation has been tamed and it has been conquered, it's really not that different than it was in when he took office. On the whole, given certain products or their prices are rising faster than others, the composition has changed slightly, but the strain on American household budgets has not gotten any better since he's taken office in any meaningful way when it comes to prices.
We talk a lot about the politics of all this here at the Hill. We have an election coming up in November. What do you think we should be watching for in the economy between now and election day in November that will give us some clues as to how people will feel when they head into the voting booth?
I think we're really going to need to see a pretty substantial decrease in inflation for there to be any big shift in the public's opinion of the economy. President Trump is already facing historically low approval for him on the economy. And it's a little bit ironic given this was exactly the situation in some ways that former President Biden, found himself in during the midterms in 2022. Inflation had skyrocketed even higher, largely because of the pandemic. And even as inflation started to even out as the midterms approached, it was far too late to do anything for the Democrats politically. For Republicans, they could be in the same situation right now. But of course, it's only February. The elections are in November. The news cycle could flip over myriad times in between now and then. And who knows what November will bring.
I guess we'll have to continue to follow and check in with you again. But for now, we will leave it at that. Sylvan Lane, business editor here at the Hill. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.